was Israel not to do if they lent money to another Israelite? This is a question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 22. We're going to be reading from verses 25 to 31. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus 22, beginning at verse 25. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like a moneylender to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's garment as a pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down. For that is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. What will he sleep in? And it will be that when he cries to me, I will hear, for I am gracious. You shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people. You shall not delay to offer the first of your ripe produce and your juices. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. Likewise you shall do with your oxen and your sheep. It shall be with its mother 7 days. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. And you shall be holy men to me. You shall not eat meat torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. In this chapter we are continuing with God's judgments that would be written in the book of the covenant and therefore become part of the law of Moses. We often think of the law of Moses containing the 10 Commandments, which of course it does, but it also contained these judgments as well as other instructions and laws that God would give later. All of it composed the law of Moses, which is why if people want to obey the 10 Commandments today, they need to obey the entire law of Moses, or they'd be breaking God's law. What is the problem with wanting to obey the law of Moses? It contained no forgiveness of sins. The blood of a bull or a goat could not remit sins, according to Hebrews 10, verse 4. Jesus nailed the law of Moses to the cross, having fulfilled it, making way for the law of Christ. Some of the laws contained in the law of Moses, like 9 of the 10 Commandments, are found in Christ's law. But many of the laws were fulfilled and not transferred to the new law, meaning that we don't have to follow them as Christians in order to be pleasing to God. However, it is still good to study about them, as they show us how God dealt with his people of old, how he expected obedience to his law, and how he expected them to be faithful. In today's reading of chapter 22, we get another set of God's judgments. In the last section, we dealt with what would happen if you gave something to a neighbor for safekeeping and it was stolen, and we ended with what would happen if you allowed your neighbor to borrow something and it was stolen. Continuing on with lending, we come to the lending of money. There was going to be a distinction between an Israelite and a stranger when it came to the lending of money. We know today that when we go to the bank to borrow money, if we have good credit, the bank will lend us money. However, they will charge us an interest rate, meaning that we will not only have to pay back what we borrowed, but we will have to pay back a little more money, depending on the interest rate, on top of what we borrowed. For instance, on a $250,000 mortgage paid off over 25 years at the current interest rate, you would pay just a little over $355,000, meaning that you paid over $100,000 in interest in order to borrow $250,000. Israel was not to charge their fellow Israelite any interest whatsoever. If someone borrowed from someone, they would pay back what they owed and not a penny more. This would prevent them from taking advantage of each other. If a neighbor's garment was to be taken as a pledge or collateral, they were to return it at the end of the day so that the person could sleep in it. Most of us live in houses with central heating, but Israelites didn't. So if a person had to give their outer cloak as collateral for a loan, they would then be cold at night. God is a gracious God, and he expected his people to be the same. The next judgment was that they should not revile or despise God. Elohim is used in this passage and is referring to God himself, not idols. Not only then were they not to take the name of the Lord in vain, the 3rd commandment, they weren't to blaspheme the name of the Lord, nor speak against his judgments. This also applied to the ruler of the people. The rulers of Israel would come in many forms, such as prophets, judges, and kings. In the New Testament, we're told to obey our governments. Here, Israel is told to do the same. God then moves on to tell Israel that they were not to delay offering the first fruits of their produce, corn, or juices, vineyards. This concerns the law of sacrifice of the first fruits, which will be more clearly defined in the future, so we'll leave our main comments until then, except to note that when Israel was commanded to offer their first fruits, they weren't to hold them back for a time. The offering was to be a fresh offering to the Lord, not a stale offering. God also tells them that they are to give their firstborn sons as a dedication to the Lord in his service, as well as offer the firstborn of the oxen and sheep, hearkening us back to the instructions found in Exodus 13. If you want to refresh your memory on that, you can refer to Lesson 49 in this series. The additional instruction concerning the animals of which they were to offer the sacrifice on the 8th day is given here in chapter 22. The final judgment in this passage concerns the eating of meat that was killed by a wild animal. Mankind was to be holy and therefore wasn't to eat of it. They weren't, however, to waste it. They would feed it to the dogs. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus 23, verses 1 to 9, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.